I never thought I'd be the guy sharing a story like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of a nightmare I never saw coming. It started a few months ago, right after I lost my job. You know that awful sinking feeling when your entire world turns upside down? That's where I was, feeling lost, anxious, and trying to hold everything together. My wife, Lisa, was supposed to be my anchor. We'd been together for 5 years, and I always thought we had something solid, something real. But losing my job threw me off my game. She was there, supportive on the surface, but I noticed little cracks, like how she'd be quick to change the subject when I mentioned my stress, or how she seemed distant at times. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Small things, really. She'd start wearing her phone more often, sneaking looks at messages when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I'd catch her in little lies, like claiming she was working late when she was out with friends. But I was too wrapped up in my own mess to pay much attention. I figured maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe I was imagining things because I was fragile, because I was scared I'd lose everything. Then one night I came home early from a job interview. I've been trying to piece things together, looking for any sign of hope. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and I wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed. But as I entered the apartment, I noticed the sound of a faint, muffled voice coming from the bedroom. My heart skipped a beat. I froze. My hand hesitated on the doorframe. Something wasn't right. I peeked in. There she was, Lisa, my wife, lying on our bed, and right next to her, someone I didn't recognize. Or rather, someone I knew all too well. It was John, my best friend. They were tangled up in each other, lips pressed, hands exploring. I could see the telltale signs of intimacy. My stomach dropped like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The betrayal hit me like a lightning bolt. I couldn't move. I just stared, watching their secret world unfold. My mind spun. How long had this been going on? How long had I been blind? I wanted to scream, but all I could manage was a cold, bitter numbness. I noticed Lisa's hand clutching her stomach. The pregnancy bump was obvious from where I stood. They were so wrapped up in each other, they didn't notice me. I felt the tears burning behind my eyes, but I held them back. I needed to see everything, to understand what I'd been missing, to get some clarity on the cruelty I was facing. When they finally heard me at the door, Lisa's face froze. Her eyes widened with shock, then guilt. John's eyes flicked to her, then to me. The silence was deafening. I managed to say, "What the hell is going on?" My voice cracked, but I kept my glare steady. Lisa's lips trembled, and she looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came. John, ever the coward, just looked away. That moment, everything changed. My entire world shattered in a second. I left the apartment that night with nothing but a pounding head and a sinking feeling that nothing would ever be the same. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want to act out of blind rage. Still, I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. The trust was gone, evaporated in those few minutes. I promised myself I'd get revenge, but I needed a plan, something calculated, something that would hit them where it hurt without turning me into the monster I was feeling like that night. Now I'm sitting here writing this, trying to piece together what's next. The betrayal runs so deep I can't even breathe right sometimes. But I refuse to be the passive victim forever. The game is on, and I've got a plan brewing. They think they're clever, hiding behind their secrets, but I've got a few tricks waiting in the wings. I don't know what's worse, how cruel they've been or how much I want to make them suffer. Either way, I'm done playing nice. They're going to regret ever crossing me. The next step is coming, and I'm ready to make sure they never forget what they did. Would you like me to continue? After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's face. Guilt, fear, maybe even a flicker of regret. But mostly, I just felt a cold fury growing inside me. I wanted to destroy their world the way they'd just demolished mine. But I knew I had to stay calm, stay smart. Reckless revenge would only make things worse. I started digging. I needed hard proof, irrefutable evidence that I could use, not just anger-based accusations. I went through her phone, which was the obvious choice. The thought of invading her privacy made me sick, but I couldn't trust my instincts anymore. I found messages, photos, even a few recordings. The messages spilled the truth. Lisa and John had been secret lovers for months, and she was hiding her pregnancy from me. It was the kind of punch to the gut that made my head spin. One message from Lisa to John Reed: "Can't wait to tell him, but I'm terrified. What if he freaks out?" That was the moment I realized how deep the betrayal ran. She'd been lying, hiding, pretending everything was normal while planning a future with him behind my back. That thought made my palms sweat and my jaw clench. I felt a wave of nausea but forced myself to keep going. I had to understand just how long this had been going on. I found more plans, flirty texts, even a message about their secret rendezvous. The night before I lost my job, they'd been sneaking around behind my back playing a game I never knew about. I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles turned white. The betrayal was so raw, so personal I could barely breathe. My stomach twisted in knots like I'd swallowed a handful of broken glass. I needed to act fast but carefully. I couldn't just confront them blindly. It would blow everything up and make me look desperate. I decided I'd gather all my evidence, then wait for the right moment. The goal was not just to expose them, but to make sure they felt the full weight of what they'd done. In the meantime, I started planning my revenge. It was a strange mix of anger and clarity. I wanted to hurt them in a way that made them understand the damage they'd caused. I wasn't interested in petty revenge or chaos. I wanted control. I wanted to see them squirm, make them realize that their lies had consequences. I'd use their own secrets against them, turn their trust into ash. I also reached out to a private investigator friend of mine, someone I knew I could trust. I asked him to dig into Lisa's pregnancy, to find out if she was really pregnant and how far along. The last thing I wanted was to be blindsided again. While he worked on that, I stayed silent, pretending everything was fine, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Most nights, I'd sit on the couch, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. I'd imagine how I'd confront Lisa, how I'd deliver the truth with a calm that would shake her to her core. I pictured her reaction, John's face when he realized I knew everything. It kept me grounded, even as a storm of rage built up inside. Then I found out something else. Lisa was already pregnant for about 4 months. That was more than enough time for her to plan the whole thing, to build a new life with him. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest again. How could she be so cruel? To think she used this pregnancy as a shield, a reason to keep me in the dark. It made my blood boil. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't rush in, guns blazing. I needed to keep my cool, gather all the pieces, and prepare for the moment I'd finally confront her. I'd come this far and I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a price. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just getting started. They thought they'd hide, slip through my fingers, that I was too broken to fight back. That's where they're wrong. I was planning something that would hit them where it hurt the most, something calculated, deliberate. And that's when I realized I'd have to outsmart them. I'd turn their secrets into their downfall. I'd make sure they understood betrayal has consequences, and I was about to make sure they paid. Would you like me to go on? I spent days piecing everything together. Every detail mattered now. I wasn't going to rush into anything reckless. My plan had to be airtight. I knew Lisa thought she was clever, hiding her pregnancy and their affair from the world. She was so sure she was untouchable, wrapped in her own lies. That's exactly why I was going to catch her off guard. While I waited for my private investigator to confirm the details, I started setting my own trap. I knew she'd be cautious now. She'd probably change her routines, be extra secretive. So I decided to plant some bugs, little devices that would record her calls and conversations. I wanted her to talk, to slip up, to give me the clues I needed. I found a way to get these devices into her car, her purse, her phone charger. It was simple but effective. I could listen in on her every move without her knowing. One night, I sat in my apartment, listening to the faint crackle of the recorder. Her voice came through, soft but tense. "I hope he never finds out," she whispered. "I can't lose everything now, not after all this planning." I clenched my fists. Hearing her admit to her own lies was like a shot of adrenaline. That's when I knew I had everything I needed. I'd waited long enough. It was time to confront her, but not just with words. I wanted her to realize that everything she'd done was exposed. I wanted her to understand she was cornered. I decided I'd do it during the day, somewhere public but quiet enough for her to have no way out. I'd have all my evidence ready, and I'd Make her face the truth. The day of reckoning arrived faster than I thought. I went to her workplace, a small coffee shop she often visited. I had my phone ready to record her reaction, and I knew I'd have at least a few minutes alone with her. When she saw me walk in, her face drained of color. She stammered, trying to pretend everything was fine. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I came to talk," I said calmly. "I've got a lot to say, Lisa. And I've got proof, more than you ever wanted me to see." I pulled out my phone, played the recordings, and showed her the messages I'd found. Her hands trembled. She tried to deny it, but her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. I pressed on. "You've been lying to me for months, right under my nose. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" She looked at me, tears welling up. "It's not what you think. I was scared and—" "Save it," I snapped. "I've heard enough. You betrayed me while I was struggling to keep everything together. And your excuse, scared, that's your answer." The entire time her voice cracked, and I felt my insides tighten with rage. I wanted her to feel the weight of everything she'd done. I knew I couldn't undo the betrayal, but I could make her regret it. I handed her a folder I'd prepared with all the evidence, screenshots, recordings, dates. Her face paled further. "You think this is over?" she asked, voice trembling. "You're just going to leave?" "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm going to make sure you understand what you've lost. Starting with your little secret." I left her there, stunned, her world collapsing around her. I walked out knowing I'd set my plan into motion fully. The game was on, and I wasn't going to stop until she paid for her lies. That night I sat alone, feeling the ache of betrayal and the thrill of a little justice. I knew I had her now in a corner. The next step was simple: wait for her to come home and then send her the final piece of evidence. I wanted her to walk into her own trap, to see the chaos she'd created reflected back at her. I could already feel the satisfaction building. This wasn't just revenge, it was correction. Her betrayal had broken me, but it also gave me the power to take it back. I was about to make her regret every single lie. "Would you like me to continue?" That evening I waited in my apartment, the tension thick in the air. I knew she'd come home eventually, probably expecting me to be asleep or too broken to confront her. But I'd made up my mind. This was the moment I'd been planning for. I kept my phone in my hand, ready to hit send on the final message that would seal her fate. When Lisa finally unlocked the door, her face was a mixture of guilt and fear. She looked around the apartment like she was expecting to see some ghost of her past self, the one who trusted me. She hesitated, then slowly stepped inside. Her eyes immediately darted to me, and I could see the flicker of doubt in her gaze. "Hey," she whispered, voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with the folder I'd prepared, the evidence, the recordings, the messages. Her breath hitched. She knew what was coming. "Lisa," I said calmly, "you thought you could hide this, huh? That I'd never find out. Well, I did more than find out. I made sure everyone else will see, too. You'll never get away with this." I pressed play. The recordings filled the room with her voice, confessing her affair, her fears, her plans to leave me while I was at my lowest. Her words echoed in the small space, cold and unforgiving. Her face drained of color. "Please." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she stammered. "It was a mistake. I was scared and—" "Save it," I cut her off. "You betrayed me, Lisa. While I was losing everything, you were planning your new life with John, and now you're pregnant with his kid after sneaking around, lying to my face. Do you even care about what this does to me?" She looked like she was about to break, tears spilling over. "I was scared," she repeated. "I didn't want you to know. I thought you'd get mad, leave me." "Too late for that," I said quietly. "You've already walked out of my life, but I'm not done. You think this is just about revenge? No, I want you to understand the damage you've caused. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything because of your choices." I paused, then added, "And I'm going to make sure John knows exactly how I feel about him." Her eyes widened. "You won't do anything." "Oh, I will," I said, "but I've got one last thing for you." I opened a small envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside was a copy of the recordings, the messages, and a note with details of her pregnancy, proof that I'd done my homework. "This is just the beginning," I told her. "You can't hide forever, and someday you'll realize that betrayal always comes back to bite." She looked at me, trembling, as I handed her the envelope. "You're going to regret this," she whispered. "I already do," I replied, "but it's too late now." I turned away, feeling the weight lift slightly from my chest. I'd done what I could. The ball was in her court, and I knew she'd never look at me the same way again. As she left the apartment, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The plan was set in motion. It was time to watch everything fall apart from the outside. I didn't need to say a word. They were about to see the consequences of their lies firsthand. And I for once felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken back control, or at least enough to get through the night. Next, I'd watch them unravel, and that satisfaction, that pure, bitter justice, would be mine. Would you like me to continue? The next few days were a blur. I kept my phone close, waiting for the inevitable chaos to unfold. I knew Lisa and John had no idea I'd handed over all that evidence, and I was eager to see how they'd react when everything came crashing down. It was strange, feeling this mix of calm and anticipation, like I'd set a trap, and now I was just waiting for the right moment to watch it snap shut. Sure enough, early that morning, my phone buzzed. I saw her name on the screen, Lisa. I answered, trying to sound indifferent, even though my stomach was twisted tight. "Hello." "Ease, listen," she said quickly, her voice frantic. "I don't know what you're planning, but I swear I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I love you, I still do. We can fix this. Please just talk to me." I let her talk, but only for a moment. I wanted her to keep talking, revealing her desperation, revealing her guilt. I kept silent, listening to her plead, all the while knowing her words were empty. I'd already made my move. Soon her phone started ringing nonstop. Messages flooded in. Friends, family, colleagues, all of them getting snippets of what I'd sent her. I watched everything unfold through my own notifications, a sick satisfaction growing inside me. Their world was crumbling piece by piece. I doubted she slept that night. I knew John was probably trying to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. By the evening, the fallout was obvious. Lisa's employer called her in for an urgent meeting. Her phone had been filled with accusations and proof she'd been hiding. Friends started pulling back, messages of shock and disappointment flooding her inbox. I could hear the silence on her end when she realized she'd been exposed to everyone she knew. That was the moment I knew she'd be feeling the full weight of her actions. I finally reached out again, this time with a firm, controlled tone. "You wanted to hide your lies. You thought you could walk away from this without consequences, but you're wrong. Everyone knows now. And if you think this is going away, you're dead wrong. You made your choice, Lisa, and it's costing you everything." Her voice cracked. "You're really doing this. You're ruining everything." "Exactly," I said. "Because you ruined my life first, and I'm not about to let you forget it." That night I sat in silence, feeling the cold satisfaction of watching her fall apart. I didn't gloat exactly, I just let her face her own destruction. It was a kind of justice, different from the revenge I'd envisioned, but effective nonetheless. The woman I loved was gone. I saw that now. Still, some part of me felt lighter, like I'd taken a step toward reclaiming my dignity. In the aftermath, I knew I'd have to make a decisive choice. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of betrayal and pain. I started planning. My next move, how to finalize the separation, how to make sure she never tried to come back. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, utter betrayal, heartbreak, loss. But mostly I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences. So I set a date to meet her, to hand over the last of her things, and to close this chapter once and for all. I kept my words simple. "Here, your key. That's the last thing I'll give you. Don't contact me again." Handing her the keys felt symbolic, like shutting the door on a life I never want to revisit. As I turned away from her, I knew I'd finally taken control. She'd lost everything, and I'd gained a kind of peace I hadn't felt since that terrible night when I saw her with John. Sometimes revenge isn't about violence or anger. It's about standing tall, making sure the other person feels the weight of what they've done. And in that moment, I knew I had done just that. Would you like me to continue? The days that followed were strange. The house felt quieter, emptier somehow, like the walls were still echoing all the lies and secrets that had been exposed. I didn't miss the chaos or the betrayal. Honestly, I felt lighter. For the first time in months, there was a clear, sharp sense of relief. I had finally taken back my life, even if it was in a harsh way. I handed over the key to her apartment, knowing I wouldn't look back. I watched her take it, her face drained and hollow as if the weight of what she'd lost finally hit her. I didn't say much. Nothing needed to be said. I just walked away, feeling a strange mix of anger, liberation, and a calm certainty that I'd done the right thing. Sometimes the only way to heal is to cut out the poison completely. When I got home, I poured myself a drink, sat on the couch, and let the silence settle around me. My mind kept replaying everything: the betrayal, the lies, and now the aftermath. I thought about how I'd never let myself be blindsided like that again. Trust had to be earned, and I was done giving it freely. Now I was focused on rebuilding what I could, stronger and more cautious than before. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. For so long I'd been caught in a storm of pain, betrayal, and helplessness, but I'd fought back. I turned their deception into my victory, and as I looked out my window, I realized that this was the beginning of something new, something I would control. To anyone reading this, I want to say, never ignore the signs. Sometimes betrayal comes quietly, creeping in where you least expect it. But even when it feels like your world's falling apart, there's always a way to reclaim your power. It's not about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about justice, about making sure the wrongdoers understand they can't get away with hurting you without consequences. And most importantly, trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. You just have to be brave enough to face the truth, no matter how painful it is. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. I walked out that door with nothing but the clothes on my back and a clearer mind. Life will go on. It has to. And I know I'll be stronger for what I've endured. Whatever comes next, I'll face it without the weight of lies dragging me down. That's how you survive betrayal, by standing tall, even when everyone else wants you to fall. And I did.